Welcome into the More Bucky Barracks podcast, the first official taping of the More Bucky Barracks podcast. I did post one earlier that was originally shot to be a membership podcast. Changed my mind. I decided I wanted to do it on this channel. So this is the first time that I'm shooting it, knowing that it's coming to everyone. It's not an exclusive. It's just on my second channel here. So welcome in. If it's your first time watching, most likely is because not very many people watch the first one. But I want to start today talking about flag football. The Big 12 kind of started to talk about this, or at least some reports came out at the end of last month. So maybe not last week, but March 31st, we got this report from CBS. Big 12 becomes first major college league to explore adding women's flag football as a varsity sport. So it's interesting that they're looking at it on the women's side. It makes sense, right? Because Title IX, it kind of balances things out with football. I think that basically volleyball for the most part kind of holds that balancing point for football for Title IX purposes, where they have to have a women's sport for each men's sport. But adding flag football could kind of expand that. You could add more men's sports, or you could even look at adding men's flag football. And of course, we have flag football coming in the 2028 Olympics in LA. We had that kind of Fanatics flag football thing earlier, I think kind of towards the end of March, but I think maybe right before the NCAA tournament started, or maybe like the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. It was a bunch of like old NFL players like OBJ, Gronk, Tom Brady was in it. They also had like Joe Burrow there, Jalen Hurts. There was a couple NFL players, retired NFL players. There was Logan Paul was in it. Speed was in it for whatever reason. And then they had like a full-on flag football team. And the talk about it was that full-on flag football team that are like professional flag players, they got the win. But it was like they put old men and they put non-football players on the NFL teams, and they've never played flag football before. But a lot of talk about that was how much different and how the speed and all those kind of things about flag football, how different it was from football. And when I saw this report that the Big 12 was kind of exploring this, if they're exploring the women's side, they're going to be exploring the men's side. And I wanted to kind of figure out what the mechanics of that would be. We've seen the USFL, or it's the UFL now with the USFL and XFL combining. We've seen that have some success. It's kind of found its place. I don't know how popular it still is, but it gets watched. We've seen that come in with the spring league. If these conferences are going to start looking at flag football, if it's going to be an Olympic sport, there is room for it to play. I don't think that it's just going to be NFL players coming over to play flag football, because it's an Olympic sport. It's expecting international athletes. So there is a spot there for colleges to move into it. And I was kind of wondering what the mechanics of that would be. I was like, okay, so you have kind of winter, spring taken up by basketball and then the NCAA tournament. And really the early part of basketball, college basketball doesn't really get any kind of coverage until maybe February, and probably late February after Super Bowl has been played and all that kind of stuff. And even then it's kind of competing with the NBA. It's really for like 4 weeks. It's really for just the month of March, the conference tournaments and March Madness, and then kind of going into the first week of April. And then you have college baseball, which almost doesn't get any coverage. The College World Series gets a little bit, but even then, I think that the College World Series plays on like ESPN2. Like it's not very popular. So I was wondering, like, okay, I don't know if they would do a summer sport, but would they put flag football as like a competitor for college baseball? Because I don't know how much, there can't be that many programs that make money on baseball. There's probably some smaller schools, like for instance, like Dallas Baptist, who's going to be a Pac-12 school. I think they generally play in like Division II or Division III for their other sports. They probably make money on baseball. Cal State Fullerton, they probably make money on baseball. These top programs, Oregon State, Florida, Southern Miss, they probably make a little bit of money on baseball. But I think that for the most part, there are a lot of power teams that don't play baseball. I think that's kind of going down a little bit. But there are also, a lot of teams that just don't make that much money. So would they put flag football up against that, knowing that flag football is an Olympic sport, which baseball is no longer an Olympic sport, hence the World Baseball Classic, and knowing that it's football. If you can have college football, and I know it's flag football, I know it's slightly different, but the thing about having college flag football is it's still going to have your team name on there. It's still going to be the Ducks playing flag football. It's still going to be Ohio State playing flag football. The thing that the UFL, in my opinion, the biggest struggle for the UFL is that it doesn't have teams that we give a shit about. I don't care about the St. Louis Battlehawks. I don't know that I could name another. I think I could name another town, but I don't think that I could name another team. I think Houston Roughnecks was a team in the XFL or the USFL, might still be in the UFL. I think those are the two teams that I could name, and I don't know that I have any other team names. But again, those teams don't have any ties to us. But if you do flag football in the spring when there's no other football going on, baseball is gaining popularity at the MLB level. You're competing with probably playoff basketball, but there's a lot of people that only want to watch football. And if you have flag football, men's flag football, I don't know about women's, but men's flag football with college logos, you're going to get some viewership. ESPN is going to buy that. ESPN is going to get that on at least Disney Plus. At the very least, they're going to get that on Disney Plus, if not ESPN2, if not ESPN on non-NBA nights. You might even get NBC to buy into it. NBC is spending a ton of money on sports right now. Prime would definitely buy into it. Prime plays like fucking cricket games. Prime is playing pickleball. I watched pickleball on Prime a couple months ago. So if they made flag football a sport, the reason that it might hold back, when I thought about this, I was like, the reason they might not have flag football as a men's sport in college is to preserve college baseball. Because I really think that you're hurting the numbers of college baseball if you put men's flag football. And the only time to do it would be in the summer or to be in the spring, to be in the late spring after March Madness. I don't know any other functional way that works. If they do it in the summer, it's the most successful. But I don't know if that works using college students. I know still technically college students, but flag football would be more so actual students than, real college football. But I just don't know the functionality of that. Women's, for sure. But I think once you put in women's, that opens up Pandora's box. And men's is definitely along the way. And as far as where they're at with women's, Nebraska is the first power conference school to add it as a varsity sport. I think that they're adding it next year. The Big South Conference announced that it would add it as a varsity sport starting with the 2027-2028 season. You got Charleston Southern, Gardner-Webb, Radford, UNC Asheville, and USC Upstate. Those are all D1 schools, not FBS schools, but D1 schools that will be adding it. And then you have the Big 12 looking into it. And again, the biggest thing is the Olympic poll. So once you get it there as a women's sport, and it has even the tiniest bit of success, you know that the men's sport's coming along, and you know that it might end up being a money maker. It's going to have way lower costs than any of the other sports to start. It's going to be it's new kind of thing, and it's one of those, it's like, the more and more that we get into these NIL eras and things like that, the more, and this is what people are concerned about, the more that these college athletic departments are going to be run like a corporation. And having a new revenue stream that actually creates revenue, men's flag football would create revenue that actually creates revenue as a way to maybe float some of the other sports, but more likely just to pull more revenue out to put into that football NIL budget. They're definitely going to be looking into it. And I don't know exactly how that all works out. I think it works out well for flag football, but I don't know how it works out for other sports, namely college baseball. I did want to make a little bit of mention. The Big Ten obviously puts a stranglehold on the best conference in college sports with Michigan's win, with UCLA's win, combined with Indiana's win, the third straight college football national championship. They get their first basketball college championship since 2000 in men's basketball. I think it was like even longer than that. It was like almost back to the 80s for women's, 99 for women. So there is a new era of college sports, which we knew. We knew there was a new era of college sports, probably starting in 2024, but I think that the Big Ten flipped the conference game absolutely on Monday night, and it took not as long as I think most people expected. I think that, for me, I expected there to be a battle between the two. Not to say that the SEC has gone anywhere, but undisputed champs in all of those sports, undisputed best conference in the country, I think is something to definitely mention. We'll see. I don't know who's going to be the favorites going into next season. I think there's going to be a lot of talk about like Texas, LSU, Georgia will still obviously be up there. I think that Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana will still have some talk about them as well. So it might be from outside of those two conferences, but if it's another Big Ten championship, we're going to see some major changes. The SEC is not going to take that line down. We will see some major changes in the years to come. That's more of why I mention it, not to necessarily conference gloat, because I don't think that people really do that, and I'm definitely not doing that. The Ducks don't win. I don't care who wins. Speaking of the Ducks, though, the other thing I wanted to talk about today is USC kind of weirdly trying to come at the Ducks for winning a recruiting battle over a 4-star. They posted this video. Let me put this thing up here. Let me kind of get things all set so you can see. So it's a minute-long video that they post on their Twitter feed, X feed, whatever it is. 45 seconds of it, 50 seconds of it are painting grass crimson or red or whatever they call their color, and then really bad font choice. They didn't kind of bold it or do anything to separate the yellow from the red. You can barely see that it says guess the grass wasn't greener over a 4-star Danny Lang, who commits to the Trojans for 2027. Now, one thing I want to point out here is that USC hasn't beat Oregon since 2019. So I don't know that, what's his name? Lincoln Riley down there has ever beaten the Ducks, and they haven't made the college football playoff ever. They haven't been to a BCS game since Pete Carroll, I'm pretty sure. Oh, no. No, they went to a New Year's Six game under Lincoln Riley. They lost that game to Tulane when they had Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams. And they lost this last season in their first Big Ten matchup. They lost 42-27 at Autzen. They got kind of weird. Jacoby Lane tried to go get the ball back after the Ducks picked it off. And I didn't understand exactly what USC was doing here, because there was a time when I was growing up, for sure, that USC was the big boys on the block. They were the team that the Ducks were just trying to beat. There was a couple upsets there in kind of I think there was one big upset in the USC heyday. And then basically as USC went down, the Ducks came up, Chip Kelly came in, and the Ducks took over kind of the lead of the Pac-12 for the next couple seasons. Both teams were unfortunately absent for a good part of the 4-team playoff. Washington couldn't hold it up in the same way that Oregon and USC did. That's where we end up where we are now, with the Pac-12 being a shell of its former self. But I don't really know why USC is going at Oregon like that. I kind of was scratching my head about it. I get it, there are the former Pac-12 teams. The Ducks are definitely the most successful of the former Pac-12 teams in the Big Ten. I was just looking at kind of the Rose Bowl. They're the only team that has actually ever played in the Rose Bowl, both as a Pac-12, Pac-10, and a Big Ten team. Now, their appearance in the Big Ten was a college football playoff game where they got their ass beat absolutely by Ohio State, but still more so than what USC can say. And I don't really get exactly what the joke is here, because they're trying to make fun of the grass is damn green in Eugene, but they say the grass isn't always greener. So it's not even that well done. The line itself and the video is like so long that a bunch of people probably skipped over it. And I think that what they're doing here is trying to create a new rival because they bowed out of the Notre Dame game, because they killed the Pac-12 conference to go to the Big Ten, and now they can't afford to play a Notre Dame game where they lose another non-conference game because they're going to lose enough games in the Big Ten. So I'm not really exactly sure what exactly they're all going after here. I think they're trying to create another rivalry, and if you want to have a rivalry with the Ducks, you got to win some fucking games, guy. You can't just be talking. You got to go out there and win some games. You got to do it on the field. And the field is actually green. It's not this stupid red color that you put on there with a terrible font. So I'm not really sure what USC is doing. I think it's trashy. I think it's trashy, number one, to be talking shit about rivalry game, or about, to try to create a rivalry over recruiting. You've had good recruiting classes before. What has that done for you, Lincoln Riley? You've never done anything, Lincoln Riley. And this is how you're running your program down there in LA? Shitty parts of LA, and LA is a shitty town anyway. Eugene is a true college town. They actually win games there. They actually make the playoffs there. Maybe they haven't won the national championship, and neither have you, Lincoln. So I'm not exactly sure what USC is doing with that, but I thought that I needed to talk about it a little bit, and this would be the right place to talk about it because it gives me a chance to really try to understand what you're doing with USC. So if you are a USC fan, comment below what USC is actually doing, but you can feel free to not comment anything because I'm sure it's going to be a stupid response, as I've talked to you USC fans, and you're mostly stupid. So I'm not sure. I think that's all I'm going to have to say about it. But I wanted to finish off with kind of the G6 landscape for 2026. Some substantive talk. I know the flag football was good, but had to get off a little bit of a rant there about USC. But the G6 in 2026 is actually really interesting. We have a lot of new alignments. I think we have basically 3 new conferences. 2 basically new conferences with obviously the Pac-12 or the Pac-8, whatever it is, in their first official season in 2026. Interesting to see how that all shakes out. The Mountain West with a very different alignment. Of course, a lot of teams going to the Pac-12 from the Mountain West. They bring in North Dakota State. They bring in Northern Illinois. They bring in UTEP. Be interesting to see how those things all shake out in the Mountain West. The MAC bringing in Sacramento State, one of the most interesting moves, I would say the most interesting move in conference realignment, maybe equal with SMU, but way more desperate and kind of with less backing than what SMU did. Now, it worked out really well for SMU, but it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out for Sacramento State. I've already talked a lot about that, but it'll be interesting to see how it actually works out on the field because Sacramento State really hasn't been that good in FCS even, so we'll see how well they do in the MAC. We have some interesting things. Louisiana Tech I think that Louisiana Tech right now has like 22 games scheduled. I don't know where they're at. I know that was earlier on, but they are stuck between the Sun Belt and Conference USA. Be interesting to see how that all shakes out. Then you have the American and the Sun Belt who both made the college football playoff last season. 2 G5 conferences last season. We'll see. Can JMU kind of keep it together with losing Bob Chesney? I think they bring in Billy Napier. And then can the American, who lost, I think, like 4 of their top coaches and basically their entire team from North Texas, can they replicate and get back to the college football playoff? One of those teams has to make it into the college football playoff. One of those conferences, one of those 6 conferences now have to make it into the college football playoff. And I don't really know who we're handicapping as the top teams. I think that you're probably looking at the American the most. They've had kind of the most success recently. Boise State is always going to be one of the favorites, but I don't really know how the polls are going to look at the Pac-12. I think the Pac-12 is the most interesting because for the most part, this is a brand new alignment. I know that there's 5 teams coming from the Mountain West that last season, not 2025, but 2024, Oregon State, Washington State played Mountain West schedules. Texas State is kind of the outlier there, which will be interesting because they had a pretty good season last year in the Sun Belt. But it'll be interesting to see how they value that schedule. They have the wild card game at the end of the schedule where it's their 9th conference game that gets scheduled based on the standings going in, but it doesn't count towards like conference championships. It just counts towards their overall record. I think they missed a little bit there on that, but it'll be interesting to see how that actually goes into play. Of course, if we have any undefeated teams coming from any of these conferences or one-loss teams, that really changes the thing, but it's hard to handicap exactly what conferences to even look at. If we're just talking about watchability, I think the two West Coast conferences have to be the most interesting races because you have the whole new alignment and then you have the FCS champions, North Dakota State, coming into Mountain West. Those are the two most interesting stories. If we're just talking about pure human interest stories, it's got to be Sacramento State in the MAC to see how that actually turns out with all the money that they're putting out. From where did they get that money? All the money that they're putting out. In an era where we have so many teams in massive debt. I just did a video earlier talking about Louisville, talking about Rutgers. There are other teams that are kind of these mid-level teams trying to compete above their station that are not necessarily doing it, and they're going into massive debt because of it. Seems like Sacramento State is well on their way to do that as well. But if it pays off with, what, if you make the college football playoff, you get like $4 million bucks. It's probably all the G6 conferences can really hope for, but then to separate that through the conference, Sacramento State's paying like $6 million each season just to be a part of the conference, not to mention all the travel they're paying for everybody else. So it doesn't even make a dent into it. But they have to basically like come and be one of the most dominant G6 teams right away to try to make this money back based on how much money they're putting out just to be a part of FCS. It's a long-term thing, but I mean, there has to be some short-term kind of cash inflow or cash influx. So Sacramento State in the MAC is definitely one of the most interesting parts. And the MAC really hasn't had any success in kind of the national championship era of college sports anyway, so it would be very interesting to see if the MAC could pull something off there. The Sun Belt is interesting too because I think that they have like a really good identity as a college conference. If JMU can replicate something that they had under Bob Chesney, that would obviously be huge for the Sun Belt. But I don't really know who is the conference to watch in the G6 part of college football next season. I would like some comments below on who you're watching. Maybe it's because you have a team in there. Maybe it's because you're just interested in what will happen, or you're kind of putting a bet. Not a real bet. Don't bet on sports. It's stupid. But you're putting some kind of like stake in one of these conferences making the college football playoff. Comment that below. And I had this thought that like, is there more to watch? More reason to watch G6 or mid-major or whatever college football than there ever has been. Not just because of the CFP, which I think is a big part of it, because one of those teams will be a part of and will technically have a chance to go win a national championship at the end of the season. Somebody's major team will play this G6 team at the end of the season, so that's one reason to watch. But also the transfer portal. How many of these G6 players came in and made a difference on Indiana over the past 2 seasons? And that's just kind of one team, one example. These players have come in and made differences on different major teams, and not just in the national championship race, but in the conference races. I mean, I think that Gronkowski from Iowa, who was one of the most important teams last season, even if they lost a lot of their big games, but kind of put the screws to both Indiana and Oregon when they played them, I think the quarterback was from North Dakota State. So even further down, even in FCS, they came up and was a part of some major games in the national title race. So the transfer portal adds even more into a reason to watch the G6 in 2026. But let me know who below you are trying to watch for 2026 in the G6. But that's all we've got for today. Thanks for watching the second episode. I'm trying to get better at this podcast thing. It's hard to kind of keep the whole thing going for half an hour, but I hope that you enjoyed today's episode and subscribe to more Bucky Barracks for more.